Hi. It's a rabbit. Because I'm going to talk about a rabbit. Well, I'm going to talk about a rabbit mink. What I'm going to talk about. So, time to talk about Carrot. Um, I have talked a little bit about Carrot in a few other videos at various points in time. I talked about Carrot, I think, when I did the video last year or the year before for Easter, where I did like a bunch of different rabbit cartoon rabbits that I like. And Carrot was on the list, along with Mirko and Lola and Bugs Bunny, and a few other ones. The loud bird outside. Sorry if you can hear that. But today I'm going to talk about Carrot in regards to her history and then in her future role as the Duchess of Zou in regards to that. So that's going to be fun. So into this, Carrot is a rabbit mink, and she is what is referred to as a king's bird of the Mokomo Dukedom, or at least that's what she is when we first meet her. In regards to this, her role as a king's bird, which she shares with Wanda, is that the two of them can go from Nekomamushi to Inarashi, Inarashi to Nekomamushi, back and forth, and deliver messages. They are not kind of strictly controlled by the daytime, nighttime, 12-hour rules that kind of some of the other minks are. And they are welcome amongst the Musketeers and the Guardians as well. So they're welcome amongst both of them. As you know, being able to go back and forth and deliver messages and such like that, as we see them performing this duty during their time when we get to the Zou arc. Carrot also is, of course, able to have Sulong, as are all minks, and Electro, again, as all minks can. And throughout the course of the story that we've seen her, from Zou through Whole Cake through, Wano and everything in those regards, we get to kind of see her grow as a character and discover the world. Fun bit, Carrot's only about 15 years old. So, yeah, Carrot's about the age of one of my younger niece. And I'm like, Carrot has now been put in charge of a country that is a walking elephant. I don't know if I would trust my 15-year-old niece to be in charge of a school, let alone a country. In that regard. Be in charge of just an elephant, not like a giant ancient one. With a society on its back. But hey, I mean, she's not alone, as I will go over later at the end of the video. She has Wanda and Sicilian and the Guardians and the Musketeers, and they're with her to give her advice on ruling and everything like that, to act as her advisors. But going into this, we don't get a huge amount of what's going on with Carrot pre everything that happens at Zou, when everything happens with Jack and everything like that. Kind of what we get in a flashback for her is that, of course, she is about 15 years old. In her youth, she joined Inarashi's Musketeer squad, and she is trained in swordsmanship by Sicilian. Unfortunately, she doesn't quite have the talent for sword fighting that would be beneficial for someone who's being trained by, full power Sicilian. And what happens is Pedro actually kind of sees them training, and he ends up saying, no, that's not the right kind of a weapon for her. She needs a weapon that works well with what is a good fighting style for her. And he's the one that actually ends up giving her gauntlets that she uses instead, that have the claws in them and look like rabbit paws and stuff like that she's able to use when she fights, and she can channel her Electro through them. And those are the weapons and the equipment that we see her use throughout pretty much the rest of the series, throughout the entirety of the time frame that we have known Carrot. Those are the main weapons that she uses. She uses them fighting against Jack's forces on Zou. She uses them when they're fighting in Totland. She uses them when they're fighting in Wano against Kaido's forces on Onigashima. If we end up seeing her again in the future, she's probably going to have those same gauntlets or a similar pair and be able to use those still in her capacity as Duchess of Zou. So Pedro is the one that actually ends up kind of training her. And as a result of this, Carrot is kind of so the musketeer outfits are like blue and have like blue capes, and then the Guardians outfits are more green in color. And Carrot actually has a cape that is green as a representation of her being trained by Pedro. Also, the fact that she's like a king's bird, that might be one of the reasons why she was chosen as a king's bird, is because she has this connection to both the Guardians and the Musketeers. And even though the Musketeers are Inarashi's squad and the Guardians are Nekomamushi's squad, they still work together, obviously. Like, they work together to fight against Jack when he came to Zou first and dealt with the beast pirates in that regard and stuff like that. So it's like they are used to working together to defend the country. It's just because of the fact that, Inarashi and Nekomamushi for like a good chunk of time did not like each other. We're at that rivalry point, mistrusting rivalry, that the two groups kind of were a little bit separate, or a little bit, not wanting to always be exactly around each other. So Carrot spends, however long training to become a member of the Musketeers, and she does. She manages to achieve that goal. And pretty much what happens during that time frame is she gets to develop a very good bond with Pedro. She has a very good bond with Wanda and a bunch of the other members of both groups, and of course just living on Zou itself. And being around all the other minks and everything. She's friends with the little monkey mink that I cannot remember his name. And we see these moments in flashbacks with her where she remembers all these different conversations that she's had with Pedro and everything, and other advice and things like that Pedro has given her over the years. Bear in mind, when Pedro first left Zou, Carrot would have been a little kid. And when he came back after everything that happened with Big Mom and losing Zeppo and everything like that, she would have been about 10, maybe 11, give or take. And then for, the rest of the time frame, he was, he's had like that death count on him. And I think that's one of the reasons why he picks Carrot, to kind of be like his apprentice at that point in time. But what we see pretty much the next time that we get introduced to Carrot chronologically in the story is when Jack and the Beast Pirates attack. And this is when they attack Zou and in search of Rizzo. And Carrot, along with the rest of the Musketeers, show up and they fight against Jack. Very, very well. They fight against him exceedingly well. Inarashi tries to be peaceful with him first, and Jack just is not interested and just starts destroying buildings. And then we get to see, get a demonstration of what the Musketeers are able to do and how well they are able to fight against Jack and his forces and the beast pirates that he has. And we get these demonstrations of what Electro is capable of. And, we see Carrot fight here in Wanda as well. And they fight until 6 p.m. And then that's when Nekomamushi and the Guardians show up. And then they deal with, Jack and his group for the next 12 hours. And then they switch back and forth over the course of the next 5 days. And then that's when Jack decides that, okay, I've lost my patience with this. And he uses the Koro gas from Caesar Clown that he uses to then poison the minks. And this drastically weakens them. This then leads into where they do try to fight against Jack and stuff like that at this point in time, even fighting against the poisonous gas. But that just causes more problems because it makes them weaker in that regard. As this happens, Jack leaves because he hears that Doflamingo has been caught, and he decides that he's going to go and try to save Doflamingo from the Marines, which, as I've stated before, Jack at least gets an A for effort, where he's like, okay, I'm at least going to go try, and, Doflamingo is Joker for Kaido, so I'm going to go try to see if I can, get him away from the Marines and stuff like that. Queen didn't try to do anything with that, neither did King, so, yeah, Jack at least gets some effort there. And what happens is, while this is going on, that he leaves some of his crew on Zou to keep an eye on the minks and everything like that, that they have basically spent the last couple of days torturing. When this happens, this is when Nami and Sanji's group shows up at at Zou, and they make their way up. They, Chopper gets to see what's going on. Carrot and Wanda actually end up attacking Nami and her group, and then from there they end up revealing that they're not there to hurt anyone, that they actually want to get rid of the beast pirates as well. Chopper forces Caesar to work with him to cure the minks of the, to get rid of the poisonous gas and everything like that. And Carrot, of course, starts to become friends with Nami and Sanji and Brooke and Chopper and such. And after that, pretty much the next thing that happens is that's when, Capone shows up, Beige shows up, and he, takes Sanji and Caesar with him and leaves Nami and Chopper and Brooke and Momonosuke on the island, kind of in the protection of the minks and everything like that. And, Carrot is kind of witness to some of this, but Nekomamushi tells Carrot and Wanda to kind of keep quiet about the incident, so that way it's not like spread about the island or whatever. Then we start to get into the original introduction of Carrot, not the flashback stuff where we actually are introduced to Carrot. So when Luffy, Zoro, Frankie, Usopp, Robin, Law, and such arrive at the Mokomo Dukedom, when they finally arrive there, they end up actually having to deal with they actually have to end up dealing with like Carrot and Wanda, because Carrot and Wanda initially think that they might be people that work for Jack, that there might be more members of the Beast Pirates come to try to get revenge. They're not, and that is revealed to them. But before that happens, they end up having these moments where they see Carrot and Wanda in the forest, and they're just like, oh my god, what are those things? Where they're just like freaking out about, like, where they're like, oh my god, who are they? And Robin's like cracking jokes about like, oh, maybe they ate our crew. You are not helpful in these situations, Robin. Please stop. I agree with Usopp on these matters. Please stop with your disturbing sense of humor. And I love you, girl, but please. And what ends up happening is, of course, Carrot and Wanda are the ones that actually end up interacting with Luffy while they're in the whale forest and everything. And this is when, they end up, it's revealed that, oh, no, they're not actually ones that hurt your friends. The Straw Hats are your friends, and the minks are actually friends of Nami and Chopper and Brooke and such, and they're actually all allies. We're actually all allies. Okay, we don't have to actually fight each other. This is good. And everything, and we get to see them riding on, like, the wani, the weird crocodile things that they have there, that they ride around on. And we get introduced to the mink culture kind of through Carrot and Wanda in that regard. As we, get to find the information out, and this is where it's then explained to Luffy and his group what happened. Jack was there and everything, and Nami and the others showing up and having, helping them and everything like that. From there, actually, I think Luffy actually ends up fighting a couple of the other musketeers that are there, or some of the other guardians or whatever that are like trying to deal with stuff at the same time, that are dealing with the intruders in the whale forest. But then it's like, no, they're actually allies, so then they have to go through that whole explanation. And from there we have it be that, okay, they take, Carrot's part of the group that takes Luffy and the group that just arrived to go and meet, reunite with Nami and, her group, minus Sanji. And then, of course, they reveal that there's Beppo and everything like that. So, they have all of that fun bit there. Where, Law is reunited with Beppo and the Heart Pirates and everything like that. From there, they are then introduced to Inarashi, and Carrot's there when they're introduced to Inarashi. And her and Wanda are the guards, are the ones that guide the group to where Nekomamushi is. And then we end up, having that interaction there, and Carrot and Wanda reveal that they're Kingsbirds, so they're able to go from one area to the other and still be okay with it and not have to worry about other groups having having the Guardians or the Musketeers throw a fit about it. So they deal with that. From there, we have these other moments where, like, Carrot's kind of getting to know the Straw Hats, and they have, like, the big party that night and everything like that. And then they have the moment, Carrot is there when Luffy is interacting with Peckoms and everything like that, and finding out what happens, and, like, trying to get Peckoms to, like, help them sneak into Big Mom's territory in Totland so that way they can get Sanji back and everything. And so Carrot's, like, watching that and everything. And, Carrot's there while a bunch of the other stuff is happening. She's there when they have, like, the big party with, like, Luffy and the Straw Hats and the Minks, celebrating that stuff with the Musketeers, and then kind of with the Guardians. So they have, like, two parties. And then Carrot is there when they end up having the moment where, Kanjuro and, Kinemon and Kanjuro have made their way to the, top of Zone, where they, reveal themselves to the rest of the Minks and everything like that, and they are welcomed and relieved that Raizo is okay and everything like that. So Carrot would have been, like, aware that Raizo was alive and that Raizo was on the island, but, like, all the rest of the Minks, they're like, Raizo isn't here, who that is Raizo, and everything like that. So they have the whole Raizo is safe moment, and Carrot is a part of that. While a bunch of this stuff is going on, Carrot and Wanda, Carrot is just kind of in the background. She's, like, witnessing a bunch of the stuff, and she's, like, learned about the Kozuki clan and stuff like that, because, like, between Nekomamushi and Itarashi, they probably told some stories about being in Wano and being around Kozuki Oden and everything like that 20 years ago and such, along with, I don't think Carrot's there when they go to the Poneglyph in the Whale Forest. I don't believe she's there. Maybe, no, I don't think she's there when they do that. She's, like, off doing something else when that happens. But then the next, then they're like, okay, well, that's when Zou gets attacked by Jack, and then Momonosuke has to make, Zou fight back against Jack, make Zunisha fight back against Jack and everything. And then this is, they do the whole plan of just like, okay, certain groups are going to go here. These Straw Hats are going to go here and try to save Sanji with Peckoms. These ones are going to go here and go to Wano and be undercover there for a while. And then, Nekomamushi is going to go off and try to find Marco. And then, Inarashi is going to arrive, kind of bring Zou / arrive at Wano and everything like that. So we kind of have those moments going on. And while this is going on, while Luffy is packing, I believe, Luffy's packing for his trip to go to Whole Cake Island because they need to replenish on food on the Sunny. Carrot's there watching him, and, like, she just starts to get this very interested look about, like, the outside world, and I think that's kind of when she makes the decision that she's going to try to go with them, that she's going to try to sneak off the island and sneak away with the Straw Hats, which she does, because when which she does go with them, and, the next kind of thing that happens is, of course, when, Luffy and the Sanji retrieval team are on their way to Whole Cake, or on their way to Totland, that's when Carrot reveals herself, and, like, they had Pedro there with them because Pedro's been there before, so he kind of knows his way around Totland, and then, of course, they have Peckoms with them as well to help with that, so, so they're dealing with all of that, but, like, Carrot stows away. And, she kind of, like, stuck down to the Thousand Sunny when the others were, like, having their big, fun time, having their party. She's like, I'm going to sneak down to the Sunny so that way they can't say no to me going with them, which works because by the time they sail off, that's when Carrot reveals herself. And she's, like, really happy that she gets to go with them. And she's like, oh, I'm so excited about this. And she's like, I got a backpack and I've got lunch and everything like that. And, like, Pedro's looking at her like, we have to turn the ship around and take her back to Zou. It's just like, like, Carrot's just like begging. It's like, please let me come along. I promise I'm not, I won't cause any trouble for the group. I'm like, well, she does end up being very useful later on, obviously, while they're going through Whole Cake Island and going through Totland and everything. Carrot ends up being very useful in that regard. But at the time, it's like, she's a stowaway. What are we going to do? And Luffy is just like, yeah, she can come along. It's fine. Since she's already on board and everything like that. But she's like, she's very happy about this, but then she just immediately like goes feral and like attacks Luffy because Luffy's eating her lunch, which of course has a carrot in it, and she just starts attacking him and like biting his ear really, really hard and everything like that. Luffy's actually kind of scared at this point in time because he's being attacked by an angry rabbit, and Nami's just like, just like pat her on the head, Luffy, it'll be fine. Just pat her on the head. And Luffy's like, Carrot just kind of instantly stops, and she's like, okay, that's fine. And they're just like, okay, I didn't think that would work. It's like Luffy is like very confused as to what just happened to him. But like, so they have that fun moment there that happens with Carrot and Luffy and everything like that. And she just like starts nuzzling him at that point in time because of course, the Minks are a very physically affectionate group of people with their, their Garchu, and was showing their affection that way and everything like that. And so Carrot does that a lot when it comes to, Nami and Luffy and Chopper and Sanji and the other Straw Hats when she's around them and stuff like that. So she's like very they're all very physically affectionate, the Minks are. At this point in time, this is when they end up learning about the Blackbeard pirates attacking the Revolutionary Army at Baltigo. As they're passing through a storm, Carrot mistakes the lightning for Electro and everything like that. And then, of course, they have to deal with Luffy's whole cooking disaster. And Carrot is just like, no. And, of course, that's just what happens there. And then, of course, when they do enter Totland, when they start getting into the Whole Cake Island arc, that's, of course, they do have, like, the Marine Rookie arc or whatever it's called and such in the anime that's, like, 2 or 3 episodes with, like, Nami and Luffy and the others running around in, trying to get food as they're dressed as Marines, which is adorable, but it's not canon and it's not really all that prevalent, so not going to really worry about it. But, from there, when they get into Totland, this is, of course, when everything happens with Luffy catches the giant fish, and then they eat it, or he eats it, and it's poisonous, and then they have to save him, and he's dying of poisoning from the fish, and then, of course, that's when the Germa shows up, and Reiju sucks all the poison out of Luffy, and everything like that. And of course, they mistake Yonji and Reiju for Sanji and everything like that. And then, of course, they have that whole, problem that happens there where that's fixed from Reiju just, like, sucking all the poison out of Luffy. And Carrot's not really involved in a whole lot of that. She's, like, part of the, oh, my God, it's Sanji. Wait, nope, that's not Sanji. He's green, or that's not Sanji. A, they're pink. B, that's a girl, type of a thing. C, where did these giant snails come from? So, like, all of that happens there. And so all of that happens, and Carrot's not necessarily super involved with that, but she's there while it happens. From there, this is where they end up landing on Cacao Island and make their way to Chocolate Town, and this is where we get like the nice, cute little outfit for Carrot, where her and Nami change clothes, and I really like their outfits while they're running around Totland in the beginning. And so Carrot's, in the cute little outfit, and then they go wandering around Cacao Island and through Chocolate Town and everything like that. And so they deal with all that. That's where they meet Pudding, and they deal with all of that. And while this is going on, Luffy and Chopper, of course, try to devour the place where, Pudding's chocolate place, and then she, like, saves them, and then she kind of befriends the Straw Hats, but then she, like, kind of tricks them and everything like that in regards to, like, being like, oh, yeah, I can tell you where Sanji is, and blah, 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 blah. I actually really like Pudding throughout the course of the entire series, and I may end up doing a video on her when I get to, like, all the Totland characters and stuff like that. I am not doing videos on all of Big Mom's children. Oh, F no. Big Mom, yes, because she's a queen, and then maybe some of the more prominent children. I might do some videos about them, or just some of the more ones that are my favorites for the Big Mom pirates, considering that they are rulers and ministers and stuff like that when it comes to those types of situations within Totland. So, might do that. But back to Carrot. Back to a different type of thing named after a food, as opposed to Linland's children. They're mostly all named after food of some kind, or food-related things. Oven. And of course, so they interact with Pudding, and she gives them this information, and then of course they start making their way to, they're like, okay, well, now we're going to make our way to Whole Cake Island. They get back to the ship where where Peckoms has left this message about, like, turn back, and Peckoms has left. Well, it's either Peckoms left the message or it's Beiji left the message and then captured Peckoms. One of the two. It's debatable. But from there, of course, they start making their way to Whole Cake Island. They battle the giant centipede that's, in the juice ocean thing that's there. They battle that. And then, and Carrot is there while she listens to Pedro tell them about what happens, or what happened to him to a degree the last time that he was in Totland. Which is information I'm assuming that Carrot did not know. By the way, side note about Pedro, I kind of ship him and Wanda. I kind of ship Pedro and Wanda. Because like they were like kids together on Zou, and they just seem like they would make a cute couple, but I mean Pedro's dead, so that's which we'll address later on in this video several times. But eventually they do make their way to Cacao Island, and they split into two groups, with Brooke and Pedro going off to go and break their way into the Whole Cake Chateau, so that way they can get to the treasure room and get to the road poneglyph that Big Mom has, along with the other poneglyphs that Brooke gets rubbings of. And then from there, Luffy, Nami, Chopper, and Carrot are making their way to the coastline, where Pudding has said that she will bring Sanji. This is, of course, a trick, and then just along, as what happens is, of course, they think they see Sanji on the coastline. It's not. It's one of the mirror clones made by Brule that then leads them into the woods and eventually makes them get lost within the seducing woods. And what ends up happening is, I actually debated about wearing like an Alice in Wonderland shirt today, because that's kind of, it does kind of end up being like Alice in Wonderlandy when it comes to Big Mom, which is what it's based off of to a degree. But of course, while they're there, and I would kind of be the same way, so I can't really get angry at Carrot or Chopper or Luffy for this, for getting easily distracted by all of the sweets and everything else that's like in the forest. I can't really blame them for getting distracted by that, because I would too. I'd be like, I really want to eat a bunch of this stuff, but I'm probably sure it's not a wise decision. And to quote the Muppet movie, Mother always told me never eat singing food. To quote that, to quote Muppet's Christmas Carol, Mother told me never eat singing food. In that regard. So, while they're looking around and looking at all of that stuff, they end up, of course, getting attacked first by the talking crocodile, and then, of course, they end up having to deal with all the different reflections of themselves, and then, of course, they end up having to deal with, they end up dealing with, it's like planking on name of character that I know I should know, Pound. They run into Pound, of course, in the forest while they're running around there, and then, of course, Carrot is actually the one that ends up, this is where we kind of get to see a little bit more of what Carrot's able to do, and we see her fight Randolph, and of course she's the one who is able to identify Randolph as not being a mink, because she mentioned something about the fact that she uses Electro against him when they clash, and he doesn't seem to like it, because that kind of confirms in her words that he is not a mink, because I don't think its minks are immune to another mink's Electro, although that would be like a good way of training someone how to use their Electro, would be to have it be that if Carrot's learning how to use her Electro ability, to have her train with someone else who knows how to use their Electro ability, obviously, and then have Carrot use her Electro ability on them so she can learn how to control it, because she's not going to cause a whole lot of damage to them. That would be a good way of doing that, in my opinion. And that might be exactly how they use it, but we never get explained how they train with their electro ability. But Carrot is the one that fights with Randolph. And she actually does pretty good against him and his crane and causes a bunch of problems for them as everything is going on. And, does quite well against that. And then, of course, she does end up getting captured because, during this time frame is, of course, when Brule shows up. And Brule, of course, first she messes with Nami, and then she starts messing with Carrot, where she ends up, making the giant mirror thing, pool thing appear on the ground, and then that kind of like gobbles up Carrot. And then Brule is able to show that she has Carrot trapped in the mirror world, and Carrot can't get out. And then, of course, this eventually leads to, of course, Chopper ends up in the mirror world later on as well. And, of course, this leads to Carrot and Chopper running around in the mirror world while Nami and Luffy are off in the Seducing Woods having to deal with Cracker. So it's, Brule is chasing around Carrot and, Chopper, and then everything else is going on with Luffy and Nami and Cracker. And so those two things are happening at the same time. And in the mirror world, Chopper is trying to take charge because he's like, in Chopper's mind, he's like, well, I am older than Carrot, so I should probably try to be the more mature and useful person here, because Chopper is used to being the youngest person on the Straw Hat crew because he is. He is the youngest, person on the crew. And, he's the youngest crew member. So with Carrot there, Chopper at this point in time is, I think, supposed to be about 18 years old, because I think he's either like 15 or 16 when we're introduced to him. So now in the story he's like 17, 18 range, and Carrot's 15. So there's 2 to 3 years difference of age difference there between them. And from there, Chopper is like, okay, call me Big Brother Chopper now. And she ends up calling him Chobro the rest of for the rest of the time frame. I think she just calls Chopper Chobro, which is hilarious. And from there, what happens is, of course, Chopper tries to come up, they work on all of these different plans for how they're able to try to trick Brule. And part of this involves, they do end up getting captured by Brule again, but during this time frame while they're running around, they end up finding out, the mirrors all over this place lead to different places all over Totland. B, the mirrors can frickin' talk to you. And if you have, I think they're the ones that figure out if you have Brule, you can like go in and out of the mirror and everything like that very easily. So there's that. So they're kind of the ones that figure out that while everything's going on. But they do end up getting captured by Brule because she has like a bunch of the other, Chopper and Carrot clones that she uses to track them, along with the giant crocodile and several other things, Randolph and blah, 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 blah. They do end up being captured, and they end up getting taken to Brule's house. While they're there, Carrot is tied up on the ceiling, or supposedly tied up on the ceiling, and Brule is making soup, and her intention is to turn it into rabbit stew. And from there is what we end up seeing is, of course, based off of Chopper's plan that he came up with, Carrot is actually hiding in the ceiling of the house, and the Carrot that's on the rope is actually a fake Carrot. It's one of the clones that Brule has made. It's like a frog or something like that is the clone. And, Carrot is, making it sound like she's, yelling out for help and everything like that, as opposed to it just being, the frog riveting or whatever the case was. That the fake Carrot was. And from the plan that her and Chopper came up with, everything goes off actually rather well. And Carrot is able to cause enough chaos by throwing a rock at Randolph and make him drop, when he's trying to drop, the frog Carrot into the pot. And this results in enough confusion that they are able to knock the pot over, dousing Brule in the boiling soup and defeating her. Then when Diesel, who is like Brule's assistant at the time, the long arm guy that is a train, thinks he's a train, Carrot ends up jumping on his back as he's running out trying to find help. She jumps on his back, covers his eyes, kind of electrocutes him, and then she ends up electrocuting a bunch of the other people in the house as well, except for Chopper. And then Diesel runs out, she jumps on his back, covers his eyes, and ends up actually making him crash by running into a wall, which is hilarious when it happens in the anime, and it's funny as heck in the manga as well, so that's just great. From there, they're like, okay, they claimed victory in the mirror world, so they were able to beat Brule and everything like that in her own world. From there, they take Brule and Diesel and a bunch of the others prisoner, and they're able to use Brule's powers over the mirror world / being in the mirror world and being able to run around and force Diesel to work for them to start trying to find where the others are. From there, of course, as Chopper and Carrot are running around the mirror world with Brule and Diesel as their hostages, they are trying to find where Nami and Luffy are, and Jinbei and Brook and Pedro and all of that stuff. While all of that is going on, they do end up finding Pedro and Brook while they are running around inside of the Whole Cake Chateau. And this is when, of course, they're able to help Pedro cause an explosion using some of his dynamite. Using some of the dynamite that he has as a distraction to kind of cause trouble for, Baron Tamago, and then he is able to escape. And then Pedro is able to escape into the mirror world. And then they're able to find Brook, who is, of course, being held hostage by Big Mom. They are able to, of course, find Nami and Luffy, and then this is where Luffy heads off to go and wait for Sanji, and then Nami and Jinbei join Carrot and Chopper and such in the mirror world where they try to find Brook. They do find Brook. He's in Big Mom's chambers where she is using him basically as a nighttime cuddle doll because he's her new interesting toy. And this, of course, leads to the whole thing where they have to, try to sneak across the room to get to Brook where he is in Big Mom's, hold, and then get him away. They do manage to succeed in this. I think it's Pedro, or it's either Pedro or Jinbei that managed to actually pull it off, but they managed to get Brook away. From there, they end up making their way to where they make their way to from there, after they get Brook, they are able to find out that Brook did manage to get rubbings, copies and such like that of all the poneglyphs, and he reveals them and shows them off, and they're just like, oh my god, Brook, you did amazing, which is true, he did. Brook was MVP of that moment. And from there, they're like, okay, now what are we going to do? And Jinbei's like, well, I have a suggestion of where we can go. And he suggests that they go and make an alliance with Beige and the Fire Tank Pirates, which they do. They make their way to Beiji's fortress, and once there, they are able to have a meeting with Beige and his crew. And, Beige and Chiffon and all of his crew. Before that, of course, we have to have, the bath scene where Nami and Carrot are in the bath and blah, 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 blah. So they have to have that moment. And, of course, then they have, they have the whole getting dressed and everything like that. They all get to be in the nice clothes, and then Carrot gets to be part of this mafia-style meeting, which is just funny. And Carrot and Pedro and everything like that are having this meeting. So this is part of this whole meeting between the Straw Hats and the Fire Tanks. It's all just so funny. I love that moment. That's just so funny where it's just like they try to paint it so seriously, and Luffy attempts to be serious and he fails. And they deal with all of that. And of course, Carrot's there while they're making all of these decisions that they're going to ruin the wedding, they're going to jump out of the wedding cake, they're going to destroy all of this, they're going to break the picture, they're going to do all of this stuff, they're going to have to fight against Katakuri, they're going to do all this to get Big Mom taken care of so that way they can kill her with the rocket launchers, and blah, 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 blah. And Sanji's like, okay, well, that's fine, but I'm going to save my family in the process, and blah, 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 blah. They all decide that that's what's going to happen, and they form the alliance. And from there, they get to the next day. It's time for the wedding. Sanji has made it back to the castle just in time to get all ready for his wedding. from there, they have it that pretty much all of Luffy's group is just like sleeping inside of Beiji at that point in time, because of course Beiji has the Shiroshiranomi and they have his internal castle, blah 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 blah, that they are sleeping in, so that way they can jump out when it's time. And they're all just asleep at that point in time because they have been going and going and going, and Jinbei manages to get them all awake at that point in time. From there, it's kind of like one thing happens right after the other, and the wedding happens. Destroying the wedding happens. They, all the fake Luffys burst out of the cake and cause that huge distraction, and then from there, Nami and Carrot and Chopper make their way via, hiding, make their way to the table where the Vinsmokes are, and after Sanji, destroys the candy there from Perospero, they are able to, Carrot, Nami, and Chopper, were able to, get the Vinsmokes their weapons and give them the, earplugs, so that way they're not going to be as troubled by what's going on with, Big Mom letting out her wails and Conqueror's Haki and everything like that. And that works rather well, and they get the Vinsmokes on their side, and they're able to rescue Sanji's family, much to the chagrin of everyone in the Vinsmoke family except for Reiju, who's like, she was prepared for what was going to happen, and then her three brothers are idiots, and Judge is an idiot as well. I mean, Sanji's an idiot at times too, but he's at least an idiot with a heart. And from there, they, of course, have it where they enter battle against a bunch of the Charlotte family. And Big Mom is, the Carrot is quite useful during this fight. She deals with several different members of the family during this whole time. And then, of course, they end up having to hide inside, they have to all retreat into Big Father when, Beiji turns into his huge outside castle form and everything like that. And there's not, Carrot is there while a bunch of this stuff is happening. She is there while they're, trapped inside or held inside of the castle for safety, and then they're able to escape, and, as the Vinsmokes act as a distraction so that way they can get away. And then, they split off from Beiji and they start making their way back to the Sunny, and, all of that stuff. So, a lot of that stuff is happening, and Carrot is there while it's all happening, but she's not super involved in the decision making at this point in time. The next big thing that happens is once they get their way to the Thousand Sunny, they have to end up dealing with Katakuri, who has shown up. And while they are there, they have to deal with Katakuri and his group that have shown up to cause a lot of problems. And while they're there, this is, of course, Perospero shows up, and Perospero ends up, trapping the Thousand Sunny there on the coast with his candy powers. And they are then able to, they have to find a way to get the Sunny free. And that's where Pedro decides to make his sacrifice play, where he starts fighting against Perospero. Luffy has jumped into the mirror world, dragging Katakuri with him, and done that. So Katakuri's there. Big Mom is still on her way, but they need to get away from the coast. Pedro has Perospero. They are fighting. Perospero pins Pedro, and then Pedro lights all the dynamite, explodes, and Carrot is watching as this is happening. Oh my god. Carrot watches as all of this happens. She is just, it's I can't imagine that. I just cannot imagine that happening in front of your eyes with some of this person that you idolize and is your friend and mentor and everything like that. Doing that. Can't imagine it. Can't imagine what that would feel like in the slightest. I hope I never have to, but it hurts enough when it's a fictional character, and it's gonna hurt even more in real life. But Pedro sacrifices himself, and that is what results in, of course, the Sunny being knocked free of the candy because he explodes the candy in the process, and at least get some chunk of Perospero. And that allows the Sunny to go. And then, because there was this moment where like Pedro and Carrot were talking just before everything happens, before Pedro goes and makes this play, because he's like, this is the only thing that'll work here to get the, you know, in the what we have available, because Sanji's not with them at that point in time. Sanji is off with Pudding and Chiffon working on the giant wedding cake. And if Sanji had been there, he would have just been able to like kick the stuff free and, you know, kick the stuff free and everything like that. And as much as Jinbei's, you know, using his, throwing the water onto the ship would have helped some with that, it wouldn't have been able to do it as fast enough. In that regard. So that was kind of out of the question, and Pedro's just like, this is the play that I'm given and this is what we have to do, and that's what he chooses. And that's what he does, and Carrot watches as it happens. And from there, at one point in time, Carrot actually tries to attack Katakuri. So she tries. She gets knocked away. Yeah. And, she gets pretty easily knocked away and, subdued by Katakuri before all of that happens. And then they have everything happen with Pedro and Perospero. And, as the ship is sailing away, with Jinbei at the helm and everything like that, and Nami barking orders as it's sailing away, Nami didn't see what happened. Carrot saw what happened. I don't remember who else saw what happened, but Carrot is the one that has to tell them what happened and that Pedro's not coming back. And Carrot just kind of has to, like, as horrible of a moment as that is, she kind of is like, okay, I have to shove down this feeling that I'm feeling right now, because we are still neck deep in enemy territory and we have to get out of here, and me having an emotional breakdown right now is not going to help this, and we need to work on getting out of here. And Carrot, to her credit, pushes all of that away for that time frame, and she's like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus on getting us out of here to the best of my ability. And she does. She helps with the team is very sad, of course, about what happened with Pedro, but they're like, okay, we gotta get out of here first before we can let ourselves start to emotionally process what just happened. And as they're making their way through Totland and everything like that, Carrot's running around helping with the riggings and everything like that all over the ship. And they're like, okay, now we need to get to Cacao Island, and then of course, help get the wedding cake and get Sanji and everything like that. So that's the next bit that happens, and that happens over the next several hours. And from there, what ends up happening is, of course, that evening or that night, while Luffy is still battling Katakuri in the Mirror World and everything like that, the rest of the Straw Hats and the Sanji retrieval team that are on the ship at that point in time are like, okay, we have to deal with Daifuku's forces, because Daifuku and Smoothie show up with their forces and their ships, and they're like, okay, how are we going to get past them? And Carrot is like, okay, I have to do this, because this is a way I can unleash this power, and I can do this without having to risk the rest of the people on the ship. And she jumps up on top of the mast and takes off. Well, she looks up at she takes her hat off at that point in time. She looks up at the moon, and Chopper and Nami and Brook are like watching as this is happening. And this is where we are introduced to Sulong, where her hair starts growing out and it goes white, and her tail, bushes up and gets really long, and her eyes go red, and it activates. And I love Carrot's transformation sequence in the anime, and I love how it just looks so gorgeous, and I love her Sulong form and everything. I just love it. I think it's just so good. And they're just like, and Nami's like, she's so pretty, and then like Carrot just like jumps, and she is running so fast across the water, just like Brook. She's running fast enough across the water that she's not sinking into the water. Admittedly, she doesn't have any devil fruit power, so she's not going to have a problem if she lands in the water. And she zips from one ship to the next, 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 ripping out all of the steering wheels, all of the steering wheels. And I blanked on the correct term for them, but running from chart ship to chart ship, just like ripping all of them out, and just sending out huge bursts of electro when she lands on the ship to just cause damage to any of the nearby members of the Big Mom pirates that are right there. And from there, she kind of has like a direct confrontation for a moment with like Daifuku, but she's able to get away after she has the moment where she's like showing that she has the wheel, and she's just like smiling at him. I love that bit. And she's like, yeah, good luck steering now. And then she makes her way back towards the Thousand Sunny, where she gets back to the ship, and she is just so exhausted at that point in time that she's just like, okay, she's caused a lot of damage to the ships, and she manages to get back almost, and she as she's trying to escape, Brooke shows up, manages to catch her, and she goes out of her Sulong form and gets her back to the ship, where she is just hugged so tightly by Nami, and Carrot is just like, I am so tired, Nami. Can I please go lie down? And Nami's like, of course, yes. And she puts like Carrot's hat back on, and then they put Carrot off to the side in one of the rooms, so that way she's safe, and she's out of the moonlight, so that way she's not going to be affected by the moonlight again, but so that way she's out of the way and safe. From there, by the time Carrot wakes back up again, they have gone, it's been a little while longer, and they have made it to Cacao Island, where they do end up getting Sanji and Luffy after everything that's happened there. And Big Mom gets her wedding cake, gets that, and they get back to, Luffy and Sanji get back to the ship, and that's when they have the moment where Carrot has to tell Sanji and Luffy to a degree what happened to Pedro. And Carrot starts crying, and she just is patting Sanji on the head as she's telling him what's going on, and then he's patting her on the head and everything. So they have that nice moment there between the two of them. And then of course they deal with having to get the rest of the way out of Totland, with having to deal with oven and making the ocean boil, and then deal with have Waratsume and the Sun Pirates help them escape and everything like that. And they are able to escape Totland, and they start making their way to Wano. And some of the stuff I can kind of blitz through a little bit here, because the next bit that happens is, of course, the Reverie arc, which the Straw Hats are not very much involved with that. They just have the moment where they read the newspaper, and they find out about Luffy's new bounty and how big it is, and blah, 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 and they're reading about the Reverie and all of that stuff. From there, they make it to Wano. When they get to Wano, they, of course, have to climb up the waterfall, and, Carrot is very interested in how this is going to work. I think she's kind of, interested in the giant fish, because the minks eat fish. She's very interested in that, and they start, they have to get their way up the waterfall on the Thousand Sunny by grabbing onto the fish and going up the waterfall. And then, of course, when they get to the whirlpool, Sanjay jumps away, and he has Chopper and Nami and Brooke all grabbing onto him as he's getting off the ship and everything like that. So they have all of that. And then, so they get separated from Luffy. Then they end up all reuniting back at Curry Castle, at Odin's castle, several hours later or whatever. And they get to, they're reunited and blah, 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 with, some of the, Kinemon and Momonosuke and such at that point in time. And the group are, of course, told the story of Odin and Toki and everything else, and reveal that, time travel is a thing, and we're actually from the past, from 20 years in the past, and we were sent forward by Lady Toki's powers and everything like that. And they have, they get that all explanation, and then they're like, okay, now we have our, everything's planned for 2 weeks when we're going to go and attack at the Fire Festival, and blah, 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 blah. Now we just have to wait and gather allies. and Carrot's, kind of part of that discussion and everything. And then, of course, they get the whole, their new Wano appropriate clothing, which is kind of cute. Carrot's outfit is just adorable. I think Carrot's outfit, it doesn't have carrots on it, but it has like some other type of vegetable or something on it. From there, Carrot isn't super involved in everything else that's happening in Wano. From there, Carrot really isn't that involved in what else happens in Wano leading up to the Fire Festival. She's there for a little bits of things. She's part of the group because she gets reunited with the other Minks and Wanda and everything, and she tells them about what happened with Pedro and such. So they have that moment there, and she tells Inarashi about it and all of that. So they have all of that interaction there. And Wanda and Carrot are part of the group that like steal a bunch of the food from the Beast Pirates at the Paradise Farms and then blame it on Ashura Doji's group and everything like that. So they're kind of part of that in regards to dealing with some of that issue there when they stole food. There's not too much else. She gets sad, or she gets a little panicked when that the mountain bandits got attacked because that Ashura Doji and his group got attacked because of the note. So there's that. And pretty much there's not really too much else. I mean, like Carrot, Wanda, and Cecilian are kind of part of the group that's getting ready for what's going on, but they are also the ones that end up making the graves for Pedro and Yasuie. Where they are placed, where Yasuie is placed, and what is left as a memorial gravestone grave cover for Pedro in Amagasa village, so in like Tama's village area is where they do that. And she's just very, Carrot is very motivated not to want to lose anybody else at this point in time, particularly anybody else that means a lot to her and such. So she's very, she probably does some more training and everything like that during that time frame up, leading up to the Fire Festival, as we see Luffy and Zoro doing their own training and everything like that. So Carrot probably does some of her own training. After that, really the next thing that happens is on the day of the Fire Festival, when the Straw Hats and the Heart Pirates and the Kid Pirates and the Scabbards and everything like that are on their way out towards Onigashima. That's of course when the Minks show up, and Carrot and Wanda are on like the Thousand Sunny with Luffy and the rest of the Straw Hats and everything. And she watches when Momonosuke is kidnapped by Kanjuro and everything like that. And they find out that he's the traitor, and they go through a whole bunch of that stuff. But there's not, she's not really part of like taking out a bunch of the Beast Pirate ships. That's just Law, Luffy, and Kid just having fun and trying to one up each other at that point in time. And then, of course, but she's, really excited. Jinbei shows up and everything like that. So she's, like, really happy when Jinbei shows back up. And then from there is when they get to Onigashima. And then, of course, they have to start making their way into Onigashima. They have to infiltrate it. And this, of course, involves them all getting, the Beast Pirate outfits and everything like that. So Carrot gets to have another new wardrobe change on top of her musketeer armor or musketeer uniform that she's wearing. And then, of course, they're working through all of that. Through everything that's going on, because Carrot and Wanda are not part of the group that ends up on the roof. They are parts of some of the groups that stay down in like the actual dining hall and festival hall and everything like that, where like the big main battle, or one of the where the kind of big battle between like the numbers and where like the mass amounts of battle is happening, that's not involving Kaido up on the roof and the Toby Roppo and everything like that. And so that's kind of what's going on there. Actually before that, going into them heading into Onigashima, when they are in the chopper or the Frankie tank, or the whatever Frankie tank thing that it is that Frankie has, the Brachio tank 5, where Usopp is driving and he has Nami and Carrot and Shinobu in there with him, and and Chopper, and Sanji is freaking jealous, and that's hilarious. So that's just funny there. And actually, while they're making their way through Onigashima is, of course, when they come across Big Mom. And, of course, Big Mom ends up, of course, recognizing Nami and Carrot and Chopper as the ones who were causing so many problems on Totland and at the wedding and everything like that. So she ends up chasing them. And she gets captured. Nami and Carrot kind of get captured by Big Mom and Prometheus and everything. So that's kind of what happens there. But there's not... I mean, Carrot, yeah, she's like dealing with some of the lower ranks of like the Beast Pirates and stuff like that when all of that stuff's happening. And she, between her and Nami, they're able to like escape Zeus, and they have like a really good combo attack together. And then, of course, she kind of gets, she meets back up with Wanda and everything like that. Yeah, I love, like, the combo attack that, like, Nami and Carrot have together where they freed themselves from the homies and everything like that using the, Nami's climb attack and, Carrot's electro and everything like that, just making this huge electro attack on the homies and everything like that to escape. So I love how they do that. But then... basically, the next big thing that happens for Carrot is when Perospero shows up, because Carrot, of course, recognizes Perospero because of what happened with Pedro, and she's like the man who, he's the one responsible for Pedro's death and everything, and her and Wanda run out to go and deal with Perospero. I will stand by this. I still wish it had been Carrot and Wanda that had been the ones to finish off Perospero, to just show that Carrot, how strong Carrot had become. I really wish that would have been the case, but it's not. But we do get a really good fight because while everything is going on, of course, this results in, going into the battle against Perospero, Carrot has a bit of a panic attack, and Wanda kind of has to like talk her through it, and is like, this is what, we have to fight him either way because he's an enemy right now, but he's also the one that is the reason why Pedro is gone. So they work together on that. And, they go Sulong at the same time, and we get, like, the great full-body shots of them in Sulong and fighting against Perospero, just giving him the huge scratches across his face and everything like that. And just, going against him. And, I mean, they don't do bad at first. They are able to cause a fair amount of damage, but, unfortunately, he uses his, candy powers to trap them and to, pin them and everything like that, and causes a lot of problems for them. And then later on, when Nekomamushi finds out that A, Pedro is dead, B, that the guy who killed Pedro is there, and C, he's currently fighting Wanda and Carrot. That's when Nekomamushi shows up, and he's the one that actually finishes off, as I said in his video, Nekomamushi is the one that finishes off Perospero. And is able to deal with him that way. And then, of course, this frees, Carrot and Wanda put up a really good fight against Perospero as best as they could, but I really wish they could have done a little bit better with, like, being able to show Carrot have this, ability to fight really well, and kind of have her be the one to take care of Nekomamushi, or to finish off Perospero, in that regard, or at least have her be the one to put the final blow on him. Killing blow is up for debate because we don't know if Perospero is still alive or not. But you get the idea. If he's not alive, he's in a lot of pain. Dealing, what he had to deal with. From there, there's not too much else that happens with Carrot during the raid. She's like there, and they talk to like Inuarashi a little bit and find out what was going on. Find out that Jack's been taken care of. Inform him that Nekomamushi took care of the guy who was the reason Pedro died, and blah 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 blah. And then we get to the conclusion of the raid where everybody is just celebrating when Luffy manages to defeat Kaido and Momonosuke manages to land the island safely. That's a funny sentence to say, but it's true. He manages to land Onigashima safely. From there, we have it that, we cut to about a week later when Luffy and Zoro finally wake up. Carrot is part of the big, oh yay, you're awake, blah, 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 really, really happy. And then they move on to, of course, the whole next obligatory bath sequence that involves all of that. She's in the girls' bath with Nami and Kiku and Otama and Hiyori and Speed and everybody, all the other women. and she's there, and so they have that moment. And then they have the huge festival, the big festival celebrating the victory over Kaido and the Beast Pirates and Orochi and all of that stuff, the freedom of Wano. And they have that huge celebration, and from there is, of course, after Nekomamushi and Arashi have their interaction with Ryukogu, after that whole battle happens, they're like, okay, we can't leave Wano undefended right now, so we have to stay here to help. Now, whether or not they had decided on this beforehand is a little bit left up for debate, but they are like, okay, this is like the final nail in the coffin. They're like, okay, we can't just leave Wano undefended. We can't just do that. We have to stay here and in our position as retainers for the Kazuki clan and help guide Momonosuke in being able to rule Wano and bring it into the new era, bring it into the dawn of the new world and everything like that. So they're like, okay, we're going to stay here. From there, they make the decision that Carrot is going to be the next ruler of Zou. And the way that they put this, the way that they explain this to her is, they're like, okay, they like bring Carrot in, and they're like, and then they have like a bunch of the other, like the Guardians and the Musketeers, Wanda and blah 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 blah, a bunch of the other minks are all in there as this is happening, and they're like talking to Carrot, and they're like, we're gonna stay here in Wano. So Zou is going to need a new ruler, and Carrot's probably thinking at that point in time of like, so is that going to be Wanda? Is that going to be Sicilian? Is that going to be someone else that is a really really strong warrior? Because as has been stated previously with the Minks, the ruler of the Minks, the Dukes of the Minks, or I guess they probably have had previous duchesses as well in the past. It's just we haven't seen any. In either the flashback from, the Odin flashback or from Nekomamushi or Arashi, but they probably had other duchesses in the past, but it's like the strongest warriors are the ones that are the Duke or the Duchess or the ruler or whatever the title would be. And Carrot definitely does not see herself as the strongest warrior, so she's not even thinking that she's going to be the one that they pick. Had Pedro survived, Pedro might have been the one that they made ruler, but that's not what happened. So they go with the next best choice, the one who has Pedro's will to carry on. And they tell they tell Carrot that we choose you to be the next ruler of Zou. And she's just like, oh, wait, what? Why? Why me? Why are you choosing me for this role? And they're like, well, you have a lot of experience with being out in the outside world, with going with the Straw Hats to Whole Cake Island, and then now being with this part and what's going on Wano. And out of the rest of the Minks, you're the one that has the most amount of experience with the outside world. Also, you have the drive and the determination to want to carry out the will of Pedro, to want to bring us into this new world, to the new dawn and everything. So, they're like, that's why we choose you. And she I think she even says, would Sicilian or Wanda or someone else be a better pick than me? And they're like, well, you'll have them as advisors. Bear in mind, Carrot is 15 years old right now. And I know that throughout history, there have been other monarchies and kings and princesses and queens and blah, 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 that have been made king or queen at a very young age, and then had like regents to keep, things going until the child was, of age to take that position. King Henry VIII's son, Edward, is a very good example of this. He was very young when his father died and he became king, but he had regents that helped guide things, and he didn't even end up living very long after that anyway. And then his sisters fought over the crown, and, Mary and then Elizabeth and blah, 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 blah. But, it's that whole concept of like, Carrot is 15. And yeah, Vivi is kind of queen of, Alabasta now, but she's like 18 and she's had a lot of experience out there in the world. And then there's Momonosuke, who is mentally still 8 years old mentally, and now he is Shogun of Wano. Physically, he's 28. Mentally, he's still an 8-year-old. And he has, just like Carrot now, these like two very, very young rulers who both have very strong connections to the Straw Hats, of course, given everything that's happened, that, you know, Carrot has Wanda and has Cecilia and has the rest of the Minks around her that can give her advice in regards to what's been going on, in regards to how to deal with certain situations. And it's not like they can't contact Inarashi and Nekomamushi ever again. It's not like they can't have Zou go back to where Wano is and have Zou, be there so that way, if Carrot needs to have like this huge decision to make, she can go and get advice from Inarashi and Nekomamushi. It's not like that's an impossible thing to happen. But that's going into like possibilities of what might happen in the future. But that's basically where we left it. Is Carrot is now the Duchess of Zou. Her and the rest of the Minks that did not stay on Wano went back to Zou, and Zou just kind of disappeared. I'm assuming Zou is going to stay in the waters around Wano at the time, for the time being, because of that bond between the Kozuki clan and Zou and the Minks, Zunisha, and everything, and because Momonosuke can, command Zunisha, that they're going to stay within areas around Wano so that way they can, get communications. And if anything, it's not like, like, they can have Beaver cards, so it's not like they can't have Beaver cards made for, like, have Carrot have a Beaver card for Momonosuke and have Momonosuke have a Beaver card for Carrot. So that way, if necessary, if Carrot needs to find her way back to Wano, they can get back to Wano easily, or if if Momonosuke needs to make a trip to Zou, he can turn into his giant frickin' dragon form and then have the paper help lead him to Zou with with Yamamoto, wrong, with Yamato or with Inarashi or Nekomamushi helping him get there. It's not like that's a problem. And of course, I want Carrot. I would have loved it if Carrot had become a member of the Straw Hats. I honestly would have been perfectly okay with that. Same thing with like Yamato becoming a member of the Straw Hats, with like both of them being on the crew, with like stowing away on the ship like everybody thought was going to happen, and then them popping up on the ship and being like, hi, we're here, we're going to stay here now and be members of the crew. Everybody wanted that, well, not everybody wanted that, I wanted that, and I would have been perfectly happy with it. Didn't happen, oh well. But I'm at some point in time we're going to have it that the Minks show back up again, led by Carrot, and hopefully she's gotten stronger since then. And maybe she's doing, yes, she's doing like the political, taking care of the country politically and everything like that. Zou seems to be a fairly stable society, but still, problems are going to arise. And Carrot's gonna, see what she, has, the other Minks there and stuff like that, the Guardians and the Musketeers and stuff like that to advise her. Maybe she'll end up developing her own version of, like, instead of the Guardians and the Musketeers, it's like something else that will be like this new setup, or they might still have the same group. She just might be like, you guys are still in charge of protecting it during the day, and you guys are in charge of protecting it during the night. End of discussion, type of a thing. But, like, I would, I want it to be that, big final battle that's happening or whatever in One Piece, that, Zunisha shows up at where this is happening. Because, like, I don't know, it would make sense for them to give one of Luffy's Beaver cards to Carrot and to Momonosuke, so that way they would be able to, track if something happened with Luffy, in that regard. And, whenever, with everything going on there. So it would make sense for, like, Zunisha to show up with the Minks, and, like, Carrot is there leading, the new, the Guardians and the Musketeers and Wanda and everything like that, leading them into battle to fight against Blackbeard or the Marines or the God's Knights or whatever the heck they're fighting in the big final climactic battle of One Piece. I would love that. So I don't know if that's going to happen. We're just going to have to wait and see. I would love that to be the case, but I have no control over that because I am not the writer of One Piece. I'm kind of glad I'm not the writer of One Piece. I'm not that creative when it comes to a bunch of this stuff. Also, I am not a good drawer. But Carrot. That brings us to the end of Zou for the time being in regards to all the rulers and leaders of Zou. In regards to the next group that I will be talking about, I may end up just doing a couple of videos about the different rulers the kings and queens and stuff, such like that we see at Reverie. Or I might go into Totland, because Totland happens first and then we have the Reverie arc. And I'm leaning toward doing Totland first and talking about Big Mom and some of her children in regard to their roles as, Big Mom is the queen of Totland, or was, depending on the certain circumstances. Whether or not she's dead is still left up for debate. But then, in regards to that, her children technically are like princes and princesses of Whole Cake, but a lot of them are also in their roles as like ministers of a bunch of the different islands. So they would have leadership roles in that regard, as like governmental roles in that regard. So probably going to be doing Whole Cake stuff next, with like doing a bunch of different, Big Mom first and then through some of her children. So Katakuri. I like Katakuri. We'll see what happens. But that's what I have here. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye. Bye from Brenda too. Bye bye. Maybe baby girl. Bye.